Hi, sir. How are you?
Very well, Stuti. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with us and taking out the time.
Not at all. It's a pleasure. I am glad to be interviewed.
Okay. So, can you tell us more about Capital Book Depot right from the beginning?
So it's it's older than me. The bookstore started much before I was born. My father shifted to Chandigarh in 1952, and that's when he started the bookstore.
Okay.
So initially, it was mostly catering to the requirements of school, because Chandigarh was very, very new, and there was a school in Sector 22.
Okay.
So we used to cater, the bookstore used to cater to the needs of the students, including sporting equipment, stationery, books, whatever required. Because it was a brand new town, it needed everything. My dad also had some photographic equipment because there was the annual photographs of the school.
Okay.
So he was part of that too.
So interesting.
So the primary interest was the students there. Therefore, whatever they would require or the school would require, the bookstore used to cater to that.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. But currently, it's a stationery shop and a bookstore.
Stationery and books and nothing to do with textbooks.
Okay. All right. Okay. What are the biggest challenges you face as a bookstore owner in today's digital age?
So digital age, the digital platform itself is not so much of a problem. Like people reading online is not so much of a problem as much as people buying books online is a problem. Because online books, because there is no check on them, they can keep selling whatever they like at hugely discounted prices. And it becomes very difficult for us to explain to anyone that why a book online on Amazon or Flipkart or any of the websites or platforms is way cheaper than what we sell over.
Yes.
And no matter what you explain to them, they will constantly have a doubt that it is the difference between that price and what we are selling at is the huge profit margin of a bookseller.
Agreed, definitely. And have you noticed any shift in demographics or reading habits of the customers over the years?
You see, it keeps evolving. When Kindle was initially introduced, there was a lot of people who switched to the Kindle because it was an exciting new product that you could read any book, anytime, anywhere, and get it instantly. But like anything in life, things come a full circle. So, but your question is more about demographics. So demographics, again, even the older generation, they found the convenience of a Kindle. Of course, it is convenient to use. But gradually, a lot of the population has shifted back to the physical book. And again, coming back to the demographics, we used to have a lot of elderly population coming to us. But we shifted the store upstairs in 2012.
Okay.
So ever since that, the elderly population, because there's a huge flight of steps to climb, they stopped coming to us completely.
Okay.
And then we had a change into a slightly relatively younger or middle-aged population. And 2 years back, this elevator was introduced into the building. And that has seen an influx back of the elderly. Of course, not the ones which were there 12 years, but a lot of the older, middle-aged who are getting into that age have started coming back. But as far as the larger market goes, I think the younger generation, especially when they've seen their parents reading a lot, they switch to reading because it just comes naturally to them that before you sleep, you got to read a book.
Definitely, because I have also been like that because my dad is a reader, my mom is a reader. So because of them, I'm into books a lot.
Right. So while you were growing up, you would have seen that this is a very natural phenomenon to
Exactly.
do. So wherever you have parents or grandparents where children are influenced at home on reading, they will continue to read.
Despite the rise of digital media, print books hold a special space for many readers. Why do you think print still matters?
See, I think one, if you have an electronic book, an e-book, you have another additional device to look at. The whole day you're lost on your phone. I mean, there is WhatsApp, there is Instagram, you're constantly clicking one to the other. And then you get to another device to look at a book. Also, although all the devices provide a reasonably good way of marking and things, but to mark on a physical book and go back to it and reread, it's a different sort of pleasure. The physical pleasure of holding a book, paper in your hand, touch, feel, that makes a difference. It's like a sensuous thing to do because your senses are involved over there. There, it's like any other screen.
Agreed. I definitely agree with this. Book to movie adaptations can introduce new audiences to literature. Have you noticed any impact on book sales or customer interest when popular books get adapted into films?
Oh yes, absolutely. The latest one is Black Warrant.
Yes.
It is a book which I was very fond of, and I constantly sell it to people who ask me for a recommendation, especially related to crime. It's real life. It's written by a jailer. So now, as soon as that has been adapted into an OTT series, suddenly people have been asking for it. So that it does make a difference.
Okay.
In fact, publishers are smart. So whenever they come out with an adaptation, whether on film or OTT, they come out with a special edition which is called the TV or film tie-in edition, which has the principal character playing on the cover of the book.
But do you also think that because, in the films, the entire story can't be covered, which you can actually cover in a book,
Right.
So does that lose that essence when it's adapted into a film?
See, that depends on the filmmaker. Like, for instance, Godfather. Godfather is a film which is almost true to the book. One book made into 3 parts in the film because it captures everything. However, most films have to be adapted in such a way that they have to be capsuled in 2.5 hours. Even a very fast reader would probably read a book maybe over 2-3 days at least. Even a thick book will take 2-3 days, or somebody might just read it overnight. But to capsule that into 2 hours, which is a conversation which is being spoken rather than being read, you have to edit things.
Have you made any efforts to adapt to the, changing times, such as selling books online or hosting events?
So hosting events we've been doing for a very long time. We in fact started way back in the early 90s when we called Kushwant Singh over.
Okay.
So he came over here to inaugurate one of his books. In fact, in one of his books, he's put in a mention of that also. And then we had Mark Tully, who inaugurated his book here. Shobha Day has come here 3 times for their book. So this is something which we have been doing since the early 90s.
Okay.
But off late, what has happened is that it's only a big name which attracts audience. And when the big name comes, they need a place where they can gather 100-150 people. So we do have authors visiting regularly over here, but we are unable to make a large event out of it. The last 2 that came were Kabir Bedi when he launched his books, and of course Deepthi Naval, where we had a very nice show over here.
Okay.
And the other aspect you asked was online.
Online selling.
Now, online selling, the aspect is the first thing that a customer looks for online is a price. And when I try to match my price with Amazon or Flipkart, I cannot do that. Right? So the entire exercise becomes superfluous. Just to be there online, to say that I'm selling online, it's a superfluous thing.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
For the sake of it, it does not make sense to me.
So you Capital Book Depot doesn't have a website?
No, we don't have a website.
Okay. With the increasing concerns about digital distractions, do you think limiting social media for young people could positively impact reading habits? Like the Australian government actually imposed a law that under the age of 16 years, the children can't have social media.
See, I have a 16-year-old son, so this is a very, very touchy thing because we are constantly discussing this at home, how to dissuade him from being on the phone or on screens. We are trying to measure his time, 2 hours on the screen, add the iPad, add this. So it's a difficult thing to implement. How much can you monitor 15 years old? After 14, they are rather independent. You can't monitor them. You can't impose instructions that you can or you cannot do that. In the earlier, as they're growing up, if you can encourage them in a certain way to be slightly more inclined towards reading, perhaps that might help. Once they're 17, 18, then they're completely free to do what they want to. But if they're already hooked onto a bit of reading which is beyond the screen, that might help. I don't think forcing it across will help at all because children at that age are also very rebellious. And the more you tell them something not to do, they would do it even further.
Definitely.
So I would imagine that positive reinforcement perhaps might work, but enforcement highly unlikely.
Do you think bookshops can, play a role in encouraging kids, like kids under the age of, let's just say, 8 years? So bookshops can play a role in that.
So not so much the bookshop, the schools perhaps. There is one particular school in Zirapur. They annually have a festival called a Children's Literature Festival.
Okay.
They insist within their curriculum that a child has to read a certain number of books, very age specific, and starting at probably kindergarten or class 1, they have children, they give out a list of books to the parents. that these 5, 6, 7 books need to be read by the children. And the children go around looking for the book and do end up reading. So that sort of inculcates the habit of reading because it is compulsory, and sometimes, let's say not all, but let's say even if 5 to 10% of the children get induced into a habit of reading by that, why not?
That makes sense. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah. So not so much the bookstore, but the larger environment and including the school.
Agreed. How important do you think local community is for the survival of a bookstore?
So it is important. You see, ultimately, all our customers, our readers are based largely in Chandigarh, but to a good extent, neighboring Punjab, Haryana, Himachal. We get a lot of customers from Punjab and Himachal as well. So if they all go online to buy, then we can't survive. Not just us, any bookseller. So that support is required. Whether it is a conscious support or unconscious support, it is there. But that's our market. If they won't walk to the bookstore, we have no business to do. So our primary objective is to get them engaged, involved. Sometimes we don't have books. We order for them. We want them to come again because once a book lover visits a bookstore, you don't end up buying just what you came for, but you look at other things. So that support is required. Without the community, bookseller cannot survive. But coming back to your question of competition, a lot of other bookstores do textbooks and general books. We don't do textbooks at all. In fact, if somebody comes to us for textbooks or let's say, for instance, medical books also, we direct them to those stores. Now, for any business to direct to competition is unheard of. But we do it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And people understand that, at least they're directing us to another, perhaps we don't consider it as competition because they're all associates. And yet, in another person's mind, it is competition that I'm recommending, say, go to that bookstore. Most people wouldn't even talk about another bookstore. So I guess that somehow affects the customer's mind, and we do it genuinely.
No, I agree with that because every time I walk into Curated Book Depot, it just feels very warm, very welcoming.
Well, thank you very much. That's what we see. It's creating a comfortable atmosphere. It's not just coming by. It's not like a chemist shop where you go with a slip in your hand. This is what I want. Even for that matter, in most bookstores who do textbooks, it's an over-the-counter thing that I want a certain book, certain author. That's it. We have to create that experience. Okay, you need to have the experience where somebody will walk in, go around the bookstore, be comfortable in an environment, happy in an environment of books, and then pick up something, and you do end up buying something.
Yes, definitely. What's the future of bookstore according to you?
Look at it like this. Be it a business or a life, there is a cycle to it. Things will go up, things will come down. There was a point of time when Elante went on a boom. Nobody would visit 17. Now that cycle has reversed. People prefer to come into an open mall, which is 17, and not go to Elante. So the cycle of bookstores will also continue like that. I mean, you have to live through the period when things are not going very well, and then you'll gradually come out of it.
That's a great way to think, I think.
Yeah, it is like that. I mean, if you keep looking at the previous high, you will never get it. But you will get a high. And then you come back to a little low, but you just have to keep going.
Can you tell us about your most memorable, a very nice memory about the bookstore?
See, I think it's again related to Harry Potter. Because the first, probably even the second book, the series was just picking up. But by the time the third book came out, the series had already picked up all over the world and it was very popular. So the third book was very well awaited that this book 3 in the series is about to come out. But the euphoria really began with book 4. So I remember book 4, 5 and 6, the day they were released in Chandigarh or in India. We were here at 5:30 in the morning with a queue of people waiting outside to buy the book.
Wow.
We had in excess of 100 bookings in advance. People had paid that please, when the copy comes, we must get it the same day, same hour. So in the peak of monsoon in August, I think I'm talking about book 5. When it came, we were all here. It was such a fantastic sight to see children, parents standing there. It's almost like a It was like a carnival. People waiting for what? A Harry Potter book. A book? People waiting for a book? Queued outside? It was what happens these days, or used to happen for the iPhone.
No. When was this? Like, what year was this?
This is 2000s. I mean, I
Okay.
can't recall the exact year, but it's the 2000s. Coming back to that Harry Potter thing, people were here from Shimla, Ambala, Patiala, all over, wherever they knew for sure that first thing in the morning they'll get the book. Those are very exciting times.
Exactly. No, I can just imagine how exciting it must have been. All right. What message would you like to convey to the younger generation about the importance of print media?
See, when you're reading a book, the sense of involvement is way higher. So, of course, everybody has constraints of time, and in this generation in particular, now the times are such that your times are divided into a lot of things. But you should devote maybe 10-15 minutes or some time for a focused reading. If there's any discipline to follow, it is Gandhi's discipline, who had defined times: 1 hour for reading, 1 hour for writing, 1 hour for being completely quiet. So one can't do 1 hour, but perhaps 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And that will induce a lot of discipline as well in your daily lives. So, yeah, people should read.
Okay. And the last question. Running an independent bookstore comes with many challenges. What keeps you motivated and, makes it all worthwhile?
So that's an easy one, because on an every week basis, I would find somebody or the other who would come to me and say, Ki, it is my dream that once I retire, I'll open a bookstore. There are people who will come that, I want to open a bookstore at a certain place. How much do you think it'll take? Investment? And then I have to ask them, is it your passion for books or is it your passion for selling? Because those are two completely different things.
Yeah.
You can be very, very fond of books, but bookstore is a business.
Yeah.
It has to be run like a business, and you can't run any business for a longer period if you're not making money in it. So that is a prime thing. But over the years, I've developed my answer. I tell them, get your checkbook and we'll find a price.
And no, so this week, this will be me because I really want to open a bookstore, but for the passion of books.
Well, your financer is here.
On that note, thank you so much for taking out the time. I had a great time talking to you.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure talking, because, I went back, so many memories came up talking like that. Thank you.
Thank you
It's
so much.
been a
sir.
wonderful conversation.